Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast today. I have with me today First Timothy. And
I still have the title.
well, actually,
I
you
don't think I
don't.
do anymore. I don't think I
You're
do.
now a former First Timothy. You're the apocryphal Timothy. How's that? There's a,
Okay.
not in the canon anymore, but we still love you.
Thank you. I'll take it. I'll take whatever I can get.
Tim was kind enough to move down to Houston and help build an amazing system for our consultants here. I told him I wanted it to be a scalable, repeatable system, and he did such a good job that when he left, and I could see Jesus moving your heart, Tim.
Maybe before I did.
Yeah, I get kind of like, oh wow. While we were at Willow, I could see hearts racing a little faster. It's like, oh man, we're gonna somehow this is good. And sure enough, Tim left. But when he left, here, if you want to learn how to win at your job, Tim did such a good job of building a system that his replacement was right here on staff and was also named Tim. Boom.
That was the criteria.
That's awesome. I mean, who does that? So for those who don't know the inside joke, it used to be there was First Timothy and Second Timothy. I didn't assign these titles. Wasn't even really liking them, but it was right when one elected official was talking about 2 Timothy that it came out. So
that's right.
So now First Timothy is apocryphal Timothy, and Tim Gaucher is taking your place. And I can't thank you enough for the great job you did leading that team and just putting it in a really sustainable place.
Well, it was a joy, and like those, it was almost not quite 6 years, five and a half plus years, which God surprised me when he moved me back up to the Midwest. That was not part of Tim's plan, First Timothy or Second Timothy's plan. So God surprised us, but it's been 18 months now, I guess, since we worked together down there in Houston.
Yeah. Well, the way I understood it was consulting work's hard, so let's go back to church work because that's easy.
Church work is easy. Yeah. I just wanted to kind of float till through my 50s, like then
I can go somewhere low drama,
take it easy. That's right.
So Tim is now, I'll get the title wrong, but as executive pastor at Willow Creek with our mutual friend Dave Dummett, who we got to walk along the path as the elders discovered that was the person God was calling. And so I have a piece of my heart or soul there at Willow. I have for a long time, but really do now. And I thought we'd have Tim on today to talk about how you rebuild a culture, particularly trust, because I think with this great resignation that's going on, I think with staffs that literally haven't been together for a year and a half and are having to come together now. Like we had our first social event when we reopened the office some time back. It was awful. It was like being at a bad middle school dance where nobody wanted to talk to anybody. I mean, and I've told our team that it wasn't their fault. It's just we didn't even know each other. So I think everyone's stuck with a rebuilding phase right now. And who better to talk about that than you, Tim? So I don't know, maybe you should share a little of the journey of how you ended up there and what you walked into and what's going on in 18 months.
Yeah. So as we were going through, William and I going through the search process with the elder board at Willow in those late months of 2019, early months of 2020, God just started doing something in my heart towards him. I think it was William. I was recounting this with someone the other day, and there was like a 2-week period where the elders are saying, we don't only need a senior pastor, we also need an interim or possibly permanent executive pastor. And we started bouncing around ideas and trying to figure that out to solve that problem for them. And at one point you leaned to me and said, maybe you should go do this for 3 months. And then maybe we should loan you to Willow for 3 months. And it's like, nah, that wouldn't make sense. But anyway, something in that season just pinged my heart, my soul for like, there's so much need here. And I think I could play a part in that. And so that was just internal. And I talked to Faith about it. And then, to get the call from them, it was the day the world fell apart. Was the same exact day. I got a call that morning from Dave saying, hey, would you think about coming and doing this with me? And I had a meeting with you that same day saying, hey, we're going to have to reduce some staff. We don't know what's going to happen, but the world's closing down. So anyway, stars aligned and took that role. Knew most of what I was walking into, actually, because you and I, the elders, had been very open book with us. They wanted us to to know everything so we could equip the next senior pastor to know what they needed to know to make a good decision. So knew Willow was coming out of just a horrendous crisis of trust, a very difficult interim season where basically someone called it a leadership lobotomy. Pretty much every person on the executive team had left. All of the elders had resigned. So it was a brand new elder board that would admit that they were in over their heads. People that love Jesus and love the church deeply, very competent in their day jobs, but really were thrust into a role that no one should be thrust into. And we're just having to figure it out. And then walking in, I remember one of the first days I got there, I said, got there meaning virtual meetings because we were all locked down. I asked someone, hey, tell me about the culture at Willow. And they said, which culture? And I'm like, the culture at Willow. And they said, we don't have a culture. We have lots and lots of subcultures. And we took the Vanderbloemen culture tool and just kind of ran it across all of our campuses and different departments. And they were exactly right. We had shining spots of really high positive culture, and we had just the cesspool of negative culture in other places. So it was really and then you pile on that, just great financial strain that the church was facing. I think 11 days after Dave and I got there on site was when George Floyd was murdered, and we had to jump in. We jumped into the racial tension that was really, really heightened, both because we're in Chicago, both because of Willow's history in those conversations. So what was interesting to me, William, was it was not just, I'd never walked into an organization that had a highly, highly toxic negative culture. I'd always been able to walk into where there's either neutral and you build it, or I think when I walked into Vanderbilt, very positive and got to build on that. So knowing we were walking into like a big challenge, but not knowing the extent of it. And it came down to trust. It came down to trust as far as, I think with a positive culture, you believe the best, and you grant trust, you deliver trust before it's earned because you have a positive culture and you believe the best about each other. We walked into a place that wasn't just mistrust, but it was because you've been chosen as a leader here. We can't trust you because our leaders fail us. Our leaders have failed us. Both a feeling of that from what happened in 2018, but also just from leaders have left us abandoned. And so, in some senses, it was the people were just really good people, but just broken and tired and exhausted and burned out. I remember meeting with one guy who'd been on staff for decades, or this was in the first few weeks. And he said, I'm not going anywhere. I just don't think I can ever trust again. Just that kind of sense of just deep, wasn't disdain, just deep sadness. Someone asked me a couple of weeks ago, they said, where is it now? And I said, well, if it's a scale of a -10 to +10, we were probably pretty close to -10, and we might be right around a 1 or a 2 right now. So we're still building in that, but I think began last summer to put some things in place, build some foundation blocks to begin to rebuild the culture.
Wow. So what would be, if you're listening and you're like, oh, we don't have a trust problem, everybody trusts me. No, they don't. They're not telling you the truth. But let's just assume it's not all rebuilding fractured trust, but building a team that's been decimated by a pandemic, by whatever the thing is. What are some of the lessons learned so far that you're like, whether you fell into it or do it and did it on purpose, what are some things that might be a culture hack for us?
I think one thing, and this isn't brown nosing, this is actually true. I think taking the pulse. So Vanderbloemen has a great culture tool for that. So that, we just 3 weeks in, let's just get a benchmark. Where are we at? How bad is it? Where is it bad? I think, and then using that, periodically, annually, whatever, just to okay, are we making progress? So I think that's really important, just to figure out where are we at. And you can do that through lots and lots of relational conversations too, anecdotal, just figuring out where it's at, what the history's been. Now, if you've been there a long time, but you're coming out of COVID and it's we got a lot of people left, we got new people coming on, we're not sure. you got a head start on it because you know a lot of people. But I think it's just good to know kind of where you're at. And then I think about this as like exporting versus importing. I heard someone say, and William, it may have been you, I don't remember who it was, said, you can't change culture. Is kind of what they said. And I'm like, sure you can. Like, because I've been in places where it's like neutral and like you take steps over time. I understand though now I kind of get it. I still don't know that I agree with it completely, but we couldn't, it would have taken years for us to shift culture. We had to kind of export some and import some. And so, and again, we weren't exporting bad people, but exporting people that were burned out, they were tired. They just didn't had people say, I can't like go through another yeehaw Christmas season. I'm too tired for this.
Wow.
And so last fall, as a part of it, we also had way too many staff as a result of just the church's history. So we just offered everyone on the team, if you want out for any reason, we will, financially help make that possible. And it just gave people a graceful exit. If they just were, I can't do this. I'm too tired. And then it was importing positive culture. So it was finding people who came, people like Robin Riley from Mariners, Megan Bagnall from Saddleback, Betsy Sunny from North Point, people that came from healthy, positive cultures that knew what it was like, knew how to build it, and bring them onto our team. We're not asking them to build the same culture from where they were, but they know what a positive culture is. And so importing some of that.
So let me see if I'm taking this in right. So the way to change culture is change the people.
I think that is what we had to lean into. Yeah. So it wasn't change all the people,
right,
by any means, but it was also leaning in, like with the people that have been there for years. And right now, 30% of our staff was here prior to the failures of 2018. 70% are new.
Wow.
And that will obviously, even grow over time. But finding the people that have been around for a long time, that have that institutional memory, that have the influence, that have trust that we didn't have because we were new, that also either were kind of leading those areas of bright spots of the culture or could get there quickly. And finding like a bunch of those folks has been life-giving. And they've come along and jumped in and helped carry it as well. So it's not like the new people are the ones with the positive culture and the previous aren't. It's a mix. But we definitely had to speeden up the pace. We had to export and import.
Well, I say this with a bit of caution to listener, but I totally agree with you. So I think of culture as two layers, and they're probably more than that, but the two that I think, the base layer is this a healthy place to work or not? Like, do people lie or do they tell the truth? So that I think you can fix over time, right? But then how are we behaving, and are we chronically tired, and is there way too many Eeyores and no Tiggers, or whatever way you want to, I don't know a way to rewire that other than having some fresh faces around. And please don't let that lead to everybody hanging up in a mass firing go on around the church in America today. Like, don't say, well, William said you have to go. Sorry. No, but I think you're really onto something. Particularly the people around the leadership table, and particularly the younger the organization is. I mean, Willow's been around, but it's still a young church. It's not, 200, 300, 400 years old. Yeah. What else would be something that you've learned along the way?
I think we started this. We're really treating this kind of as a church plant because we really needed to go back and look at mission, vision, values, just how we behave. Even making sure our statement of faith, all of that, like was true to who we are and where we're going forward. And so we did that with staff values as well, and just began to pull together teams. Jenny Catron, who's an associate of you guys, has helped us with this. She only lives about 2 hours north of us, so we consider her a neighbor. She drives down every now and then to help us. And we put together a culture team in April, and it was a mix of people from various campuses, various teams, tenure, ethnicity, gender, all that. maybe 15, 16 people. And we just began to dive deep on who do we want to be? And I know I've heard you talk about, should values be aspirational or should they just be evidence of who we are? In our case, they had to be aspirational because the culture was so bad. We didn't have a choice. If the values reflected who we were, we'd had to say, we mistrust each other. That's a value, so they had to be aspirational. But this group helped us, which was all staff members, helped us kind of surface these, like discover these with lots and lots and lots of conversations with our staff teams and really journeying deeply on it, so that when we introduced them in early September, there was just a sense of excitement, anticipation, kind of this. It was really a fun meeting to have. We're going to dive deeper with that here in some meetings in the upcoming weeks of really not operationalizing. And what I learned from you guys at Vanderbloemen was, driving those deep into the employee journey. And we started last 2 days ago was the first time we had several people stand up and say, here's a value and where I saw it lived out in the life of someone on staff this week. And as we get those rhythms in over and over and over again, and into our onboarding and into our how we hire, hiring for the values, all of that, I think it's not going to be fast, but I think in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see that needle move quite a bit.
That's awesome. So the pandemic, boy, I can't imagine starting that whole task all virtual. But it did birth some cool new things. Tell us a little bit about your coaching network, because I watched it happen for years here, but it's changed now, right? You've got a whole new way, right?
Yeah. So COVID kind of forced me into it, and now I absolutely love it. So yeah, like you mentioned, been coaching a small group, 10 or 12 leaders that would be under the category, and depending on the title of executive pastor, executive director, pastor of administration, that kind of title for probably 15 years now, once or twice a year. And as it got to the end of 2020, it's like ready to launch again. It's like, okay, people are not ready to travel. So we launched it virtual last January, and it's really, really taken off. We got about 65 leaders in it now. It's growing 2 or 3 leaders every month, but we gather together the 4th Monday of every month, and it's a couple hours together. We have a facilitator. This month, it's a guy named William Vanderbloemen who's going to talk to us about the Great Resignation. So looking forward to that. But we have different facilitators that will lead a 30 to 45, 50-minute discussion, usually interactive with folks, with some large group discussion. And then we'll break out into smaller groups of about 12 to 15. And we have a cohort leader for each of those and able to drive really deep into kind of what the issues and concerns are. And then we send a gift box every month, which is kind of fun, with often a book, some kind of a leadership book, something fun, swag kind of thing as well, just to surprise people in between. But it's been a really cool thing that has really taken off. And it's not like a fixed group for a year. It's just jump in whenever you want. We do it month to month to month. When it's no longer useful for you, you can cancel and hang with us for years or months or whatever works for you.
Coaching on demand.
Yeah, it really is. And actually, we just did put all of the material just in the last 2 months on demand for those that are members, so that if either they miss a session or they heard a session and they're like, my team has to hear this, they can easily go to that library and play it for their team.
And it's Leading Smart?
LeadingSmart.com. Yep.
Oh, that's great. Well, we'll send that out in the show notes to everybody. And if you're not on that email list, go to vandernews.com. We won't put you on all the other email lists. We're segmenting. So we'll be nice and not fill you, and we won't ask you to take a survey. So it's a fairly kind list to be on. But Tim, I wish you well. I look forward to seeing how God's going to use you guys in the coming years. And I think it's going to be a pretty cool story. So thanks for all you've done for us, and thanks for being here today. So,
yeah, I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah,